Welcome into Seattle Seahawks Today. It might be the Seahawks bye week, but there is still plenty of rumors and news around the Seahawks to discuss, beginning with a possible reunion for a former coach. How about hiring Dan Quinn? It took the Seahawks media all of like 48 hours to ask head coach Pete Carroll about bringing back his former defensive coordinator after the Falcons, to the surprise of absolutely no one, chose to move on from their head coach after an 0-5 start. As a reminder, Quinn was the Seahawks defensive coordinator in 2013 and 2014. That defense was awesome, and it's why he was very quickly hired as the Falcons head coach, where he's been since then. The reality is for this defense, even though Seattle's 5-0, not very good. 20th in points allowed per game, dead last both in total yards and in passing yards. The saving grace so far has been 10 takeaways by this defense, but you're going to have a very tough time convincing me that any defense that allows the most yards in the NFL is actually good. Here's what Pete Carroll had to say when asked about hiring Dan Quinn. Can we give Dan a chance to deal with it? I love Dan. Have to see what's happening in his world. Haven't thought about anything about that in terms of hiring Dan Quinn. This is about him getting reset and balanced. I'm going to try and help him and support him any way I can. That's not exactly a no from Pete Carroll. Now, maybe you bring back Quinn in an advisory role for now. In general, mid-season defensive coordinator changes don't often work out, but the scheme Dan Quinn runs isn't that different from the Ken Norton one, and there is, of course, coaching staff familiarity there with Quinn. So maybe it's a mid-season move, maybe it's an end-of-season move. I like the idea of Dan Quinn coming back to Seattle in some capacity, and there will be interest in him once the year ends as a DC, much like Gus Bradley has found success with the Chargers. So do you want Dan Quinn as the Seahawks defensive coordinator, be it now or at the end of the year? I will make this the pinned comment on today's video, so if you get the ad break on YouTube, scroll on down and get your votes in. Type Y for yes or type N for no. Now, I'm sure at some point we're going to get a mailbag question about Lev Bell. I'm going to get ahead of that, though. It does not make sense for the Seahawks to go out and try to acquire Bell before the trade deadline. Yes, the Jets are trying to move on from him. Yes, Bell was once a top 5 back in the NFL. And yes, the Seahawks have always shown a penchant for wanting to add more running back talent. I don't like the idea of Bell to Seattle, though, for a couple different reasons. The biggest of which, A, he's owed $5 million for the rest of the year. If he's dealt at the trade deadline, it's like a little over $6 right now. That's a lot of money to pay for a player who, since he sat out an NFL season and signed with the Jets, in reality has sucked. I am sorry, Lev Bell. There's no way around it. You're averaging 3.3 yards per carry. I know the Jets are terrible and the offensive line is bad, but yikes, that's horrible. Now, his receiving stats are a little bit nicer with 69 catches and 500 yards. Not exactly earth-shattering. Beyond that, Chris Carson, over the past couple years, has been the better back. So Bell's not going to be your number one back. Carlos Hyde is banged up. He should be back soon, if not once the bye week is over. Rashad Penny is eligible to come off the PUP list. More on that at the end of the show. You drafted DJ Dallas and Travis Homer. Because of the cost involved for Lev Bell and the fact that he'd probably complain if he wasn't being the lead back, I'm simply not that interested in adding Bell right now to the Seahawks team. I know he was once great. That is not who he is anymore. The Seahawks offense is great as it is right now. There's no reason to risk adding a potential locker room issue. But of course, I want to hear your guys' votes as well. Do you want Lev Bell on the Seahawks? Give me a 1 for yes or a 2 for no. Let's move on now to Tyler Lockett. Do the Seahawks need to feature him more on offense? Quick general note. The offense is awesome. This is nitpicking. But with that in mind, Lockett was really great the first 3 games and then has not been as anywhere near involved the past 2 weeks, and he's too talented to get less than 5 targets per game over the past 2 games like he's had for Seattle. I get it. DK Metcalf has emerged. He's absolutely balled out. I'm not saying take snaps and targets away from Metcalf. I'm saying you found a way to get Metcalf involved and Lockett involved early this year. Lockett's first 3 games were awesome. 24 catches, 4 touchdowns. He made the Cowboys defense look worse than the Oklahoma State Cowboys defense. But the past 2 games, 9 catches for 6 yards, or 9 targets for 6 catches and 83 yards. Those are not Lockett numbers. That should be 1 game of Tyler Lockett. So I know Metcalf is balling out. That is a good thing. Russell Wilson, the Seahawks offense, they still need to find a way to get him involved just a little bit more. Now, we do still have our deal available with our sportsbook partner, BetUS. Head over to chatsports.com/bet. Put down $100 to get 2 things. Number 1, a 125% deposit bonus when you use promo code Seahawks125. And if you are a new BetUS depositor, once you do that and place a bet, email us at Seahawks@chatsports.com and we'll get you guys hooked up with a Seahawks jersey. So, remember, that is only available for new BetUS customers. After you sign up, deposit, place a bet, then email us, Seahawks@chatsports.com, and we'll get you guys hooked up with a jersey as well. We'll keep that deal open for a limited time. I don't know how much longer it will be available. They should probably do it and not dilly-daddle and wait around. Let's go to LJ Collier now, who was called by Bleacher Report as the Seahawks' biggest disappointment this year. And if you guys have been around Chat Sports for a while, you know I didn't like the pick of LJ Collier. But he did have his first career sack against the Minnesota Vikings. That could be a good thing for him. He is still a young player. There is still time for him to emerge. He has unquestionably been better this year than what he was in his first season. But you still need more out of him. Benson Mayowa has been fine. We'll talk about Damontre Moore. I think overall this year, you can argue Alton Robinson has outplayed Collier. You need better production out of this edge rusher because you spent a first-round pick on him. You have battled injuries and all kinds of problems. If you're the Seahawks, it's tough to pick a true disappointment because you're 5-0 and you're playing great. But I think it's fair to say Collier has not lived up to expectations that the fans and the organization had for him after making him a first-round pick out of TCU. Now, we here at Seattle Seahawks Today, we strive to tell you how it is. Sometimes you'll like it, sometimes you won't. But if you want honest and real information about your favorite team, the Seattle Seahawks, then subscribe today. This is the #1 Seahawks YouTube channel out there, rapidly growing, so hit that big red button and subscribe today. I mentioned Damontre Moore. If you don't mind my mediocre title there, I think it's time for more for the Seattle Seahawks. He had a very strong showing against the Minnesota Vikings. He only played 21 snaps, and the majority of those actually came when he was lined up at defensive tackle in a sub-package pass rush situation. I like that mold for Moore because Seattle loves to kick some of their defensive ends into DT, especially when some of those players aren't playing particularly well. But Benson Mayowa has been a reliable pressure generator for Seattle, but you need someone to actually make plays. That's what Damontre Moore did in a limited sample size against Minnesota. So with a defensive line that has not lived up to expectations, I say get him on the field a little bit more. Now, a question for you guys, I think it's a tough one actually. Who was the Seahawks' best defensive lineman? If you'd asked me entering the year, I would have said Jarran Reed. That's not been the case this season, so let me know what you guys think in the comments section. I do want to offer some more praise here for a defensive player. That is KJ Wright, who we had discussed several times about, hey, maybe he could end up being a trade chip or a surprise cut candidate with the way his contract is structured. But he's been playing more strong side linebacker with Bruce Irvin hurt, and the past 2 games of KJ Wright have been incredible. And this is not a dig at Bobby Wagner. This is praise instead towards the play of KJ Wright. He's been the best linebacker on the field. For whatever reason, he's looked more comfortable the past 2 weeks, had the great interception against the Minnesota Vikings, a bunch of pass breakups. He looks good out there. Cody Barton's been getting the weak side linebacker work with Jordan Brooks banged up. But I think regardless of whenever Brooks comes back, keep Wright at that strong side linebacker spot in the base packages. It seems to work well. I have been very impressed by his play, with Wright playing at the level he is, plus Wagner, and if you get Brooks back in the near future, this is once again one of, if not the outright best, linebacking cores in the NFL. Now, if you guys want to stay safe out there and not get the Rona, get yourself a Seahawks mask. Head over to chatsports.com/Seahawks mask. They are on sale for a limited time only, 30% off, and some of them are even a little bit higher discounted than that. So check the comments, check the description as well. I'll get that link in there for you. There's a massive amount of variety. They have the individual ones, multi-packs, player-themed ones as well. You can get yourself a Russell Wilson mask to rep the eventual NFL MVP this year. They are all available at chatsports.com/Seahawks mask. Now, Seahawks Twitter, which I love because you guys are hilarious, spent a lot of time arguing the past day over the usage of Travis Homer. I guess that's what happens when you're 5-0. You can spend time arguing about how the number 3 back should be utilized for your offense. Homer on the ground as a runner, not very good. 3.9 yards per carry. Hasn't looked like he's anything more than a replacement level player. So from that perspective, it's really not all that intriguing, and I get why you'd want to bench him. I still say I'd like to see more of DJ Dallas. But especially this past week, Seattle more or less used Homer as an extra pass protector. And when an obvious passing downs, they brought him in to pass protect. 20-plus snaps, 11 of them were pass blocking reps, which is very rare for a back in today's NFL. Now, I'd still like to see DJ Dallas get utilized just a little bit more. But you know what? Rashad Penny's going to come back soon. He'll surpass Travis Homer. In the end, maybe not the biggest thing to worry about if you are the Seahawks or Seahawks fans. Speaking of Hyde coming back, I did want to mention that there are likely some reinforcements coming for the Seahawks organization. Mike Iupati missed last week's game against the Vikings. He's got a knee problem. I think he could end up being back after the Week 6 bye. Pete Carroll already said he expects Jamal Adams and Carlos Hyde to have the same thing. I'd figure Jordan Brooks comes back. We'll see on that one. Not as convinced about Lano Hill, however. And then there are several players eligible to come back from either IR, the PUP list, or the NFI list. Philip Dorsett, Rasheem Green, Rashad Penny, 3 players who the Seahawks were counting on to play bigger roles. We'll see where Penny's at. He still might be a little bit further away. Pete Carroll didn't really give much of an update earlier this week. Darrell Taylor would be a nice addition to this team. I will believe it when I see it. He did not get to really do anything in camp because of his injury. It might be a totally wasted season. I thought Colby Parkinson was closer, but I guess we'll see what moves the Seahawks will be able to make once those guys are eligible to come off those lists after Week 6 ends.